Armand had always lived a quiet life. He woke up early each morning, drank his coffee, and walked the same streets of his small town, greeting the same people he had known since childhood. His days were simple, ordinary, and safe, and that comfort made him content. But on one cool autumn evening, his routine was about to be broken in a way he could never imagine. It had been a long day at work. He decided to take a walk in the hills just outside the town, a place where the wind was fresh and the night sky stretched endlessly. The stars sparkled like tiny diamonds, and the quiet hum of nature made him feel calm. He loved these walks, the kind where no one disturbed him, where he could think about life, dreams, and the small wonders of the world as he walked along the dirt path. His eyes caught a strange light in the distance. At first, he thought it was a shooting star. But as it grew closer, it didn't move like a normal star. It was bigger, brighter, and seemed to be falling toward the forested hill. Armand's heart started to beat faster. Something strange was happening, and though a part of him wanted to turn back, curiosity pushed him forward. The light landed in a small clearing just a few hundred meters ahead. Smoke curled upward from a small crater. And the air was charged with a strange energy that made the hairs on Armand's arms stand on end. He approached slowly, careful not to trip on the rocks and roots beneath his feet. The closer he got, the more he realized this was no ordinary falling star. Lying in the center of the crater was a sleek, metallic pod, partially damaged from the impact. Its surface shimmered under the moonlight, reflecting colors he had never seen before. Armand's mind raced. What could this be? A secret government experiment? A piece of futuristic technology? Before he could think further, he noticed movement inside the pod. His heart skipped a beat. With trembling hands, he approached the pod's opening. There, barely conscious, was a figure unlike anything he had ever seen. At first, he thought it might be a child. But the shape and proportions were different, slender, graceful, almost ethereal. As her eyes fluttered open, Armand was struck by their color, deep, rich, and glimmering with a light that seemed alive. She was beautiful, not just in human terms, but in a way that felt otherworldly. Her skin had a soft luminescence, and her features were delicate and perfect, yet strange enough to make him realize she was not from Earth. "Are you okay?" Armand whispered, unsure if she could even understand him. She tried to sit up but winced in pain, and he quickly knelt beside her. "Hurt," she murmured softly, her voice musical and calming, though accented with a sound he couldn't place. Her words were clear enough for him to understand, yet they carried a melody that seemed to linger in the air. Armand's instinct to help kicked in. Carefully, he lifted her out of the pod, supporting her weight as she leaned against him. Her movements were fragile, like she could shatter if he moved too quickly. He guided her through the trees, away from the smoking crater. The night was cool, and the forest around them was alive with the sounds of nocturnal creatures. But it all felt distant compared to the moment he was in. He found a small clearing near a stream. The ground was soft and dry. He helped her sit down and noticed how she observed everything around her with wide, curious eyes. Her gaze lingered on the leaves, the reflection of the moon on the water, and even the simple sound of a bird in the distance. There was innocence in her wonder, a pure fascination that reminded Armand of how children see the world. "You safe?" she asked again, looking at him with those glowing eyes. "Yes, you're safe now," Armand replied, trying to keep his voice steady. He didn't know what to say, how to comfort her, or even if it would be enough. He felt a strange responsibility, a duty he had never felt before in his life. She nodded slowly, closing her eyes for a moment. "Thank you," she whispered. The way she said it made him shiver. There was something in her voice, soft and gentle, that made him feel as though she trusted him already, even though they had just met. Armand looked around the forest, trying to find anything that could help her. He found a few fallen branches and leaves to make a small bed for her to rest on. He searched his pockets and found a bottle of water, which he offered to her. She drank carefully, as if each sip was precious. He realized she must have been traveling a long distance, injured and exhausted from whatever had brought her to Earth. As the minutes passed, Armand studied her more closely. Her hair was long and flowed like liquid silver under the moonlight. Her ears were slightly pointed, delicate and elegant. Her hands, which she now rested on her lap, were slim and almost too perfect, with long fingers that seemed more delicate than any human's. And yet, despite all these differences, she had a warmth about her that made him feel at ease. "Where are you from?" he asked softly, unsure if she would answer. She hesitated, her eyes flickering with something like fear, and then she spoke. "Far away, very far." Her voice carried a quiet sadness, and Armand felt a pang of sympathy. He could sense that she had been through something difficult, something he could not even begin to imagine. "I can help you," he said. "We'll figure this out together." She looked at him, and for a moment it seemed as though she was measuring his words, deciding if she could believe them. Then she nodded slowly. "Yes." Together, Armand felt a strange mix of awe and responsibility. He had never imagined that on a quiet walk in the hills he would find someone who was literally from another world. Yet here she was, relying on him, and he could not ignore her. He realized that this night, which had begun like any other, had become something extraordinary. It was the beginning of something bigger, something that would change his life forever. And even though he did not yet understand what that change would be, he felt a spark of excitement, mingled with fear. Deep in his chest, hours passed, and Armand stayed by her side, keeping watch over her as she rested. He could feel her breathing slow, her body finally relaxing after the trauma of the crash. He looked up at the stars, thinking about the vastness of the universe and the impossibility of finding someone like her. And yet here she was, sitting quietly beside him, a stranger from a faraway world who had chosen him as her first friend on Earth, in the quiet of that forest. With the night sky stretching endlessly above them, Armand felt something he had never felt before, the weight of destiny. The sense that his life had just taken a turn that no one could have predicted. He did not know what tomorrow would bring, whether the world would ever accept her, or if they could ever return her to where she belonged. But at that moment, none of that mattered. All that mattered was that she was safe, and he was there to protect her. And as he watched her close her eyes and drift into a light sleep, he realized that nothing in his ordinary life could ever feel ordinary again. When Armand woke the next morning, the forest was bathed in soft sunlight. Birds chirped in the distance, and the air smelled fresh with the scent of dew and fallen leaves. The crash site from the night before seemed even more surreal in the calm daylight. He looked at her, still resting on the bed of leaves and branches he had made, and felt a mix of wonder and responsibility. She was truly unlike anyone he had ever met. She stirred, blinking slowly as if waking from a deep, dreamless sleep. Her eyes met his, and he noticed a spark of curiosity mixed with caution. She tried to sit up, but winced again, reminding him that she was still weak. "You, awake," she said softly, her melodic voice carrying a tone of careful observation. "Yes, you rested well?" Armand asked, offering her a small smile. She nodded, a faint smile playing on her lips. For a few moments they sat in silence, simply taking in the morning. Armand realized that while she looked young, there was something in her presence that felt wise beyond her appearance. It was as if she had seen things most humans could not even imagine. Her gaze scanned the forest, taking in the details of the trees, the small stream nearby, and the way the sunlight reflected on the water. "I need to move," she said suddenly, her voice calm but firm. "They will come." Armand frowned. "Who will come?" he asked, trying to understand. She hesitated, her hands clenching slightly. "My people. But I escaped. They wanted to take me back, and I could not." Her words were slow, careful, as if she had to weigh each one. Armand realized that she had traveled far to escape some danger, though he did not yet understand the full story. Armand nodded slowly, choosing his words carefully. "I'll help you. Whatever you need, we'll figure it out together." Her eyes softened, and for the first time, she seemed to relax slightly. "Thank you," she whispered. There was gratitude in her voice, but also a hint of vulnerability, a reminder that she had no one else to rely on. They spent the next few hours in the forest, trying to understand what she needed. Armin found a small patch of soft grass and helped her move to a more comfortable spot. She watched him carefully, noticing the way he worked, the way he tried to make her safe. She asked questions about the trees, the water, and the sounds of the forest. Everything was new to her, and she asked them with genuine curiosity. As if seeing the world for the first time, Armand realized that she was not just injured, she was also disoriented. She had landed on a world completely different from her own, with strange rules, unfamiliar surroundings, people she did not know. Yet she adapted quickly, asking intelligent questions and observing carefully. "What is this?" she asked, pointing to the small stream nearby. "It's water," Armand explained gently. "You can drink it, and it keeps the plants and animals alive." She knelt down carefully, dipping her hand into the flowing water. Her fingers skimmed the surface, and she watched as the ripples moved outward. "Strange, but beautiful," she murmured. Armin smiled. "You'll get used to it. Earth has many simple things that can seem strange at first, but they're all part of life here." As the morning passed, Armand noticed how attentive she was. She seemed to absorb everything from the smell of the earth to the way the wind moved through the trees. It was clear that she was intelligent and perceptive, and her ability to understand human speech amazed him. He realized that communicating with her would not be impossible, though it would require patience and care. "Need help," she said finally, her voice small. "Repair pod," Armand nodded. "Yes, I'll help you fix it. But we'll need tools, and it may take time. It's not something I can do alone." She looked at him with a mixture of hope and worry. "Together?" she asked. "Yes, together," Armand replied firmly. He spent the next few hours examining the pod, trying to figure out what could be done. The damage was severe, with cracks in the hull and strange burns on the metal. Armin had never seen anything like it. He could not tell if it was from some kind of energy weapon, a mechanical failure, or something else entirely. Yet he knew they had to try. The princess watched him work quietly, pointing small suggestions, pointing to certain parts of the pod, and asking questions. Armand was impressed by her understanding, even though he could not explain how she knew what she did. It was as if her knowledge came naturally, without effort, and he found himself learning from her as much as she was learning from him. During their work, Armand tried to learn more about her. "Why did you come here?" he asked carefully. She hesitated, her eyes darkening with the memory. "Danger. At home, I had to leave. Not safe." "For me?" She looked down, her fingers tracing patterns in the dirt. "I did not choose." This, Armin felt a deep empathy for her. He had never imagined that someone could be so far from home, so completely alone, and yet so brave. "You're safe here," he said softly. "I promise." Her gaze lifted to his, and for a moment the forest seemed to disappear. There was trust in her eyes, trust that was rare and precious. Armin realized that she had no one else to rely on, and he had become her protector. Her only friend in this strange new world. They spent the day preparing for the challenges ahead. Armand collected sticks, stones, and pieces of metal from the forest to use as temporary tools. He built a small shelter using branches and leaves, enough to protect her from the elements. The princess observed him carefully, offering small suggestions and asking questions about Earth's materials. She seemed fascinated by everything, from the texture of the wood to the way the leaves rustled in the wind as the sun began to set. Painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Armand noticed a change in her demeanor. She seemed less fearful, more curious, and even playful. She asked him about simple human things: why people walked on two legs, why the trees grew tall, and why the stars shone at night. Armin found himself smiling at her questions, realizing how extraordinary it was to share this world with someone so different, yet so eager to understand. When night fell, they sat together near the small fire Armin had made. The warmth of the flames reflected in her eyes, and for the first time, she seemed relaxed enough to laugh softly at something he said. Armand felt a strange happiness, a sense of connection he had never experienced before. Despite the danger, despite the unknown, he felt that this moment, sitting quietly by a fire, Sharing warmth and stories with someone from another world was perfect. Before they slept, Armand looked at her and asked gently, "Do you remember your home?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, sometimes, but far away. I must go back. Someday." Armand nodded, understanding that the day would come when she might leave. But for now, she was here, and he would protect her. "We'll find a way," he said. She smiled faintly, resting her head against the soft leaves he had prepared. "Together?" She whispered, double quotes, "Yes." "Together," Armand repeated, feeling a bond forming that went beyond words. He realized that this was not just about fixing a pod or surviving the night. It was about trust, friendship, and the beginning of a journey neither of them could predict. As they drifted into sleep, the forest around them seemed alive with possibilities. Armand knew that the coming days would be filled with challenges, discoveries, and moments that would test both of them. But in that moment, under the vast night sky, he felt a sense of hope and purpose he had never felt before. For the first time in his ordinary life, Armand understood that the universe was bigger, stranger, and more beautiful than he had ever imagined. And he knew, deep in his heart, that meeting her was only the beginning of something extraordinary. Days passed, and Armand and the princess slowly settled into a routine. Each morning, Armand would wake to the soft light of dawn and find her already observing the world around her. She had a quiet curiosity that never seemed to end. She would point at birds, insects, and even the flowing water in the stream, asking questions about things that most humans took for granted. Armand found himself smiling more and more at her fascination. Even after years of seeing the same world, he realized he was seeing it differently through her eyes. They spent their mornings repairing the damaged pod. Although progress was slow, the princess, though small and delicate, tried to help. Her knowledge of technology was unusual. She would point to certain parts of the pod, indicating which ones needed fixing first. Armand was amazed by her understanding. Some of her suggestions were ideas he had never thought of, and they worked. Little by little, the pod's structure began to look less broken. Hope grew in their hearts. Beyond the work on the pod, the two of them spent time talking. At first, their conversations were simple. She asked about food, about people, about Earth itself. Armand would explain how humans lived, what they valued, and what made them happy. Sometimes, she would ask deeper questions about why people hurt each other, or why the sky was blue, or what made someone truly brave. Armand did not always have answers, but he enjoyed their conversations. He felt that she made him think about the world in ways he had never considered. One afternoon, while gathering more materials to repair the pod, Armand noticed that she was quiet. Usually, she asked so many questions that he barely had time to answer them all. But now she was still watching him work. He looked up and asked, "Are you all right?" She tilted her head, her glowing eyes meeting his. "I watch you," she said softly. "You care. You protect." Armand felt his heart warm. She had noticed the way he had been watching over her, making sure she was safe, helping her when she needed it. He had done it without thinking, simply because it felt natural. But hearing her acknowledge it made him realize how strong their connection was becoming. As the days turned into nights, the bond between them grew. She would laugh at his jokes, even when they were silly. She would watch him eat and mimic his movements, trying to understand human habits. Armand, in turn, learned more about her world. She could not tell him everything. Some things were secrets, some things too complicated for him to understand, but she shared small details. She spoke of stars far brighter than those seen from Earth, cities that floated in the sky, and of beings who could communicate without words. Each story amazed him, and he could see the loneliness in her eyes when she spoke of the place she had left behind. One evening, as they sat near the fire Armand had built, the princess suddenly reached out and touched his hand lightly. Armand froze, feeling a strange warmth spread through his chest. She looked at him, her eyes soft and uncertain, and said, "Thank you for everything." Armand squeezed her hand gently. "You don't have to thank me," he said. "I want to help you. I want you to be safe." She smiled faintly, but there was a sadness behind it. I never knew someone could care like this, she whispered. The words made Armand realize how isolated she must have felt. Even on her own world, perhaps she had never experienced someone being so kind, so patient, and so willing to help without expecting anything in return. He felt proud and protective at the same time, knowing that he was giving her something she had not had before, trust and companionship. As their days together continued, Armand noticed that he had begun to change too. His ordinary life, once predictable and calm, now felt small and limiting compared to the experiences he was having with her. The world seemed larger, more mysterious, and infinitely more beautiful. He looked at her not just as someone in need of help, but as someone extraordinary, someone who had opened his eyes to a universe he had never imagined. One morning, while the sun rose over the hills, she asked him a question that caught him off guard. Armand, why? Help me. He paused, thinking carefully. Because it's the right thing to do, he said finally. Because you're here and you need help. And because I don't want to see anyone hurt, especially someone like you. She looked at him for a long time, her eyes reflecting a strange mix of understanding and gratitude. You, different, she said softly. You good? Armand smiled, feeling both happy and humbled. She did not speak like most humans, but her words carried a truth and clarity that touched him deeply. He realized that her perspective, her innocence, and her honesty had a way of cutting through the noise of everyday life. With her, everything felt simpler, clearer, and yet more meaningful. The bond between them deepened further when Armand tried to teach her about Earth's simple joys. He showed her how to catch fish from the stream, how to start a small fire without harming the forest, and how to identify edible plants. She learned quickly, her curiosity driving her to try everything, sometimes successfully, sometimes not. They laughed together when mistakes were made, and celebrated small victories when they succeeded. One day, while exploring the forest to gather materials, the princess stopped suddenly and looked up at the sky. Stars different, she murmured. Armand looked where she was pointing and saw the stars twinkling brightly in the clear night sky. Yes, he said. They're beautiful, they remind me, she said quietly, her voice almost a whisper, of home. Armand understood then that no matter how much she learned about Earth, a part of her heart still belonged to a world he could never see. He felt a pang of sadness, realizing that their time together might be limited, that one day she might have to leave. But at the same time, he knew that every moment they shared now was precious, a memory that would stay with him forever. As the sun set each evening, they would sit by the small fire, sharing stories and observing the forest around them. Sometimes they would simply sit in silence, enjoying the comfort of each other's presence. Armand noticed that he no longer felt alone in the way he had before. The world felt safer, warmer, and brighter when she was there. And he sensed that she felt the same way about him, even if she could not say it directly. One evening, as the fire flickered and shadows danced across the forest, the princess spoke again. Armand, trust you, she said softly, her voice steady despite the weight of the words. You, safe. Armand looked at her, moved by the sincerity in her eyes. And I trust you, he replied. You're not alone anymore. Not while I'm here. Her eyes shone faintly in the firelight, and for a moment, the world outside the forest seemed to disappear. There was only the two of them, sharing a quiet understanding. A bond formed through trust, care, and the shared goal of survival. As the night deepened and the stars filled the sky, Armand realized something important. Their connection was more than friendship. It was a bond that went beyond words, a deep understanding that came from facing fear, uncertainty, and danger together. He did not yet know what the future held, whether they could repair the pod fully, or whether she could ever return home. But he knew that whatever happened, this bond would guide them through the challenges ahead. And as they drifted into sleep that night, side by side in the safety of the small shelter, Armand felt a sense of peace he had never known. The world was vast and mysterious, full of dangers and wonders, but with her by his side, he felt ready to face anything. For the first time, He understood that life was not about staying safe and following routines. Life was about connection, trust, and the courage to step into the unknown with someone you care about. And with the princess, he had found that courage, that connection, and the beginning of a journey that would change everything. The days that followed were filled with both progress and tension. Armand and the princess worked tirelessly to repair the pod. Using tools and materials they had gathered from the forest and nearby streams, the pod, though still damaged, began to regain some of its shape. Its sleek metallic surface reflected the sunlight, and the strange designs engraved on its exterior hinted at technology far beyond anything Armand had ever seen. Every small success brought a sense of accomplishment, but also a quiet awareness that the real challenge was still ahead, turning her safely to her world. The princess watched Armand carefully as he worked. Her eyes seemed to hold a mixture of hope and worry. She could sense that he was doing everything he could, and she appreciated it deeply. Yet she also knew that even if the pod could be repaired, their journey back to her world would not be simple. There were dangers she had left behind, people who would not hesitate to capture her again. And now, she was facing the possibility of leaving Earth, a world that had become unexpectedly familiar and comforting because of Armand's care. One afternoon, while testing a repaired part of the pod, she suddenly looked at Armand with a serious expression. "They coming," she said softly, almost as if afraid the words might attract attention. Armand stopped what he was doing and looked at her, concern written across his face. "Who is coming?" "The people. From my world," she replied, her voice quiet but firm. "They find me. Must return. I cannot hide forever." Armand felt a pang of worry. He had known that the day of departure might come, but hearing her speak about it made it real. "We'll figure it out," he said quickly. "We'll make sure you're safe no matter what." She nodded, but her gaze drifted to the sky, where the clouds moved slowly across the bright blue expanse. "I do not want to leave Earth," she admitted softly, almost to herself. "It beautiful. And I happy." Here Armand's heart ached at her words. He understood completely. She had found comfort, trust, and even a kind of joy in the brief time she had spent on Earth. He had come to care for her deeply, not just because of her vulnerability, but because of her spirit, her curiosity, and the gentle way she viewed the world. The thought of losing her was almost unbearable. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky with shades of orange and pink, Armand and the princess sat near the fire. Silence hung between them, but it was not uncomfortable. It was the silence of understanding, of two beings sharing a moment of reflection. The princess finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Armand, what will happen if I leave?" Armand took a deep breath. He wanted to be honest, but he also wanted to give her hope. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I do know that you've made a difference in my life, and I hope I've made a difference in yours. Wherever you go, you'll always have a part of Earth with you, and a part of me." She looked at him, her glowing eyes reflecting the flickering firelight. "I feel same," she said. "I never thought someone care like this. You, my friend, my protector." Armand smiled softly, feeling warmth spread through his chest. "And I will always protect you," he said firmly, "no matter what happens." The following days were filled with preparation. Armand gathered the last pieces of material needed for the pod, while the princess instructed him on how to operate some of the more complex controls. Though her instructions were unfamiliar, they were precise and helpful. Armand followed her guidance carefully, realizing that their teamwork had become seamless. They were no longer just human and alien. They were partners in a mission that was bigger than either of them. Despite the work, tension grew with the knowledge that her people would eventually arrive. The princess grew more anxious as days passed. At night, she would sometimes stare at the stars, her thoughts distant, as if she could see her home world among the constellations. Armand noticed her worry and would sit quietly beside her, offering words of comfort. "We'll handle this," he would say. "We're ready for whatever comes." One evening, after a long day of work, the princess approached Armand. She hesitated for a moment, then took his hand gently. "Armand, I must ask." Her voice trembled slightly, though her eyes were steady. "Will you stay with me?" Armand froze, his mind spinning. The words were simple, yet carried a weight that he could barely comprehend. She was asking him to leave everything he knew, his town, his life, his world, and come with her to a place he could not imagine. And yet he could feel the sincerity in her eyes, the hope that he might accept this unimaginable offer. He looked at her, searching for any sign of hesitation, but found none. She trusted him completely, and he knew that whatever choice he made would change both their lives forever. His heart pounded, and for a moment he could not find words. He began finally. "I've never been anywhere like your world. I don't know what's there, or what dangers might be waiting, but—" He paused, taking a deep breath. "But I do know that I don't want to leave you. Not now, not ever." The princess smiled softly, her eyes shining with emotion. "I hope you can come," she said quietly. "But I understand. If not, I do not want force you." Armand shook his head, a determined look on his face. "No, I'll go," he said firmly. "With you. Wherever you need to go." Relief and joy spread across her face, and she squeezed his hand. "Thank you," she whispered. The simplicity of the words belied the depth of the emotions they shared in that moment. For the first time, Armand felt that he truly belonged somewhere beyond the ordinary world he had always known. The next morning, they began the final preparations. The pod was nearly ready, its surface polished and repaired as best as they could manage with the materials available. Armand packed a few supplies, not knowing what might be needed on a world so different from his own. The princess instructed him carefully on how to operate the controls once they reached her home. Each step they took brought them closer to the moment of departure and closer to an uncertain future as they worked. The princess paused and looked at Armand. "Earth, I love," she said softly. "But I ready go." Armand nodded, understanding her feelings. He too had grown attached to this world, but more than that, he had grown attached to her. "I'm ready too," he said. "With you, I can face anything." Finally, as the sun rose on the day of departure, the pod stood ready. Its surface gleamed in the morning light, and the strange symbols etched into its hull seemed to hum faintly with energy. The princess looked at Armand, her eyes reflecting both hope and sadness. "This may be last moment on Earth," she whispered. Armand took her hand, holding it tightly. "No matter where we go, we'll face it together," he said. "Always." And as they prepared to step into the pod, Armand felt a mixture of fear and excitement. The unknown awaited them, a world beyond anything he had ever imagined. But with her by his side, he knew he could face it. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever dangers or wonders they would encounter, they would face them together, bound by trust, friendship, and the choice to step into the unknown, hand in hand. The morning air was crisp and still, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The pod stood gleaming in the clearing, reflecting the pale light of dawn. Armand and the princess stood side by side, hands lightly touching, feeling the weight of the moment pressing on them. Today was the day she would leave Earth, the day that would decide the course of both their lives. The princess looked at him, her glowing eyes filled with emotion. "Armand, you ready?" she asked softly, her voice trembling slightly despite her calm demeanor. Armand took a deep breath and nodded. Yes, he said firmly, though his heart pounded in his chest. I'm ready. With you. She smiled faintly, the smallest curve of her lips holding both joy and sorrow. I never imagined this, she murmured. 2. Meet someone like you to feel safe. Armand reached out, brushing a strand of her silver hair behind her ear. You've changed my life, he said quietly. Even in this short time, you've shown me a world I never knew existed. I want to see it with you, no matter what it takes. The princess's hand tightened around his. I hope you can. Forgive Earth, she said softly, almost as if apologizing for leaving behind the place he called home. Armand shook his head, smiling gently. I'm not leaving Earth forever, he said. I'm leaving it with you, and if this is where you belong, then this is where I belong too. They stepped toward the pod together, their movements slow, savoring each moment before the unknown. The princess reached out to touch the controls, and Armand watched as she expertly activated the pod's systems. Lights flickered across its surface, and a low hum filled the air. Armand realized that this pod was alive in a sense, powered by energy far beyond anything he had seen. And now it would take them to her world. A place he had never imagined and could barely begin to picture. As the engines began to glow faintly, she turned to him once more, her voice soft but urgent. Armand once. Leave Earth. Cannot. Return easily, he nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. I know, he said, but wherever we go, we'll face it together. The moment of departure drew near, and a quiet tension filled the air. The forest around them seemed to fade, the sounds of birds and rustling leaves replaced by the soft hum of the pod. Armand felt his heart racing, the fear of the unknown mingling with excitement and hope. The princess squeezed his hand lightly, grounding him, giving him courage. Then, as the pod's engines began to glow brighter, she did something unexpected. She stepped closer to him, took his hand fully in both of hers, and looked into his eyes. Her voice was barely above a whisper, yet it carried the weight of her feelings. Armand, will you stay with me? The words hung in the air, a question simple yet profound. For a moment, Armand could not speak. The universe seemed to pause around them. She was asking him to leave everything familiar, to step into a world he could not yet understand, and to trust her completely. And yet, looking into her eyes, he felt no doubt. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. Yes, he said finally, his voice firm and steady. I will stay with you. Wherever you go, whatever comes, I'll be with you. A smile spread across her face, radiant and full of relief. Her hand pressed gently to his cheek, and for a moment, the fears of both their worlds seemed to vanish. They had made their choice, and the bond between them had been sealed. The pod's engines grew louder, low vibration filling the clearing. Armand followed her inside, taking note of the sleek interior, its surfaces smooth and glowing with faint natural light. He marveled at the technology, far beyond anything he had ever seen, yet somehow intuitive and easy for the princess to operate. She guided him to a small seat beside her own, fastening his restraints with calm efficiency. Hold tight, she said softly. This journey. Long, but safe. Armand nodded, gripping her hand as she activated the final sequence. The pod trembled slightly as it lifted from the ground, and a bright light surrounded them. The trees of the forest blurred below, fading into a mosaic of colors as the pod accelerated upward, leaving Earth behind. Armand felt a strange mix of awe and fear. The stars stretched out before him, brighter than he had ever seen, some glowing in colors he could not name, as the pod soared higher. She looked at him again, her eyes full of warmth and trust. Thank you, Armand, she whispered, for staying. He smiled, squeezing her hand. I wouldn't have it any other way, he said. I'll stay with you, no matter where we go. Hours passed as they traveled through space. Armand marveled at the beauty of the cosmos, the swirling galaxies, the distant stars, and the strange nebulae. The princess explained things quietly, pointing out celestial formations and describing phenomena he could barely comprehend. Her voice was calm, melodic, and comforting, guiding him through the wonder of her universe. Though the journey was long, the time together felt intimate. They shared stories of Earth and her world, their hopes and fears, and moments of quiet reflection. Armin realized that the journey itself was part of their bond, a shared experience that would stay with him forever. Finally, as they approached her world, a landscape of light and color unlike anything Armin had ever imagined stretched before them. Cities floated above the surface, their structures luminous and elegant. Strange beings moved gracefully through the streets, some with wings, others with forms he could not describe. Yet the planet itself radiated a sense of peace and beauty. The princess guided the pod gently toward the surface, and Armin felt a mixture of awe and nervousness. They were about to step into a world completely unknown, a world that might feel strange and overwhelming. Yet he knew he was not alone. She was with him, and together they could face whatever came next. As the pod landed softly, she turned to him, her eyes shining. "Welcome, Armin," she said softly. "This is my world. And now, yours too." He looked around, taking in the beauty, the colors, the strange architecture, and the beings moving gracefully around them. It was overwhelming, but he felt a sense of belonging he had never known on Earth. "It's amazing," he whispered. "Thank you for letting me see it," she smiled, gently taking his hand. "You came with me because you wanted. That means more than anything." Armin nodded, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. He realized that this journey was not just about leaving Earth or exploring a new world. It was about trust, connection, and the courage to step into the unknown with someone he cared deeply about. Together, they stepped out of the pod, hands tightly clasped. The world stretched before them, full of wonders and possibilities. Armin felt a strange thrill, a mix of excitement, fear, and joy. He was leaving everything familiar behind, but he was doing it with the one person who mattered most. And as they walked forward into the radiant landscape, Armin understood that life was no longer about safety or routine. Life was about choice, courage, and the connections that made every risk worthwhile. With the princess by his side, he was ready for whatever came next. The universe was vast, full of mysteries, and yet, for the first time, Armin felt that he had truly found his place within it. And the princess, radiant and hopeful, walked beside him, knowing that together they could face anything, no matter how strange, dangerous, or beautiful the world might be.